Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are back in Japan and you're going to see a few Japanese reviews coming up over the next couple of weeks, so I hope you enjoy these. Now, for the first one that we're going to film during this time in Japan, we are going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys have been doing some really nice beers over the last few years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of IPAs, but mainly the New England Hazies. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before. It's a sub-style though within that style category that we haven't really looked at, so I'm quite curious to see how this one compares to the other beers that I've had from them before. It is supposed to be very nice though, and it is a style that I very much enjoy. So, needless to say, I'm really curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit north of me here in Osaka to a place called Mochimune, which is in Shizuoka Prefecture, right next to Mount Fuji, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from West Coast Brewing. So this particular beer is called Harmonic Dreams. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up from liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Yamaichi here in Osaka, who pretty much supply all the Japanese beers that I review for you here on the channel. Great little shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika, and yeah, they had a few different things from West Coast, but this is the one that kind of caught my eye. One, because it's West Coast, and two, I just like the name of it. You know, they get quite a lot of things from these guys in there. But it's been a wee while since I had a West Coast from them, and you know, it's always nice to try a West Coast IPA from West Coast Brewing. So let's crack on with this one and see what it's going to have in store for us. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from West Coast Brewing before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and you will see the Japanese list being added to quite a little bit over the next wee while. But yeah, we'll crack on then and go to the brewery notes. So to tell you a little bit about West Coast Brewing once again. So, West Coast Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Mochimune in Shizuoka Prefecture, right next to Mount Fuji in Japan. And the brewery was founded back in 2019 by Derek Baston, who is originally from Seattle in Washington in the American Pacific Northwest, and he had previously worked as an architect. So Derek originally came to Shizuoka back in 2003, and he would often visit different breweries during his trips home to the US, and he said that he'd always been inspired by the craftsmanship that went into the West Coast American beers, and he wanted to bring some of that to Japan with him because there weren't many breweries doing this at that time. Remember, craft beer only really kind of kicked off in 2003 with 1993, sorry, with the reforms that allowed the GB breweries to pop up, and it wasn't until a bit later that they started brewing American style things. But apparently the idea to found his own brewery can be traced back to 2014 when he designed the Shizuoka distillery for Gaia Flow, and this was his first real look inside the brewing and distilling world, and it inspired him to visit other breweries and distilleries and talk with people inside the industry. And apparently doing this made the whole process of starting his own brewery seem a lot less daunting. So he founded a bar in Shizuoka called 12 to basically test the water and see if the beers that he wanted to brew would be a hit. And it quickly became clear to them that they would be, and the Japanese people, the locals, would drink them. But they found a premises in an abandoned tuna processing factory in the Mochimune marina, and they renovated it and converted it into a brewery. So this brewery is equipped with a 10 BBL system, which is around 1,600 litres per brew. They've got 10 fermentation vessels there and 2 bright beer tanks, which are the ones that are basically used to give the beer its last little bit of aging before it's put into bottles and cans and things like this. And they produce between 12 to 20,000 litres of beer per month. And the 3 brewers there are Satoshi Niwa, who's from Japan, he's the brewing manager, and then there's Cedric Mel, who is from France, and also Grant Scholler, who comes from the US. But the brewery's mascot is this guy here, the Hop Dude, and he appears on pretty much all of their artwork, and this artwork is designed by Simon Henshaw. But over the last few years, or over the first few years of the company, we could say as well, they've leaned mostly toward brewing different IPAs, but they're also in the process of establishing a barrel program as well. So we'll probably see some sour beers and some big barrel-aged imperial stouts and things like that from West Coast Brewing as time goes on. So that's quite exciting. And I also saw a Pilsner from these guys the last time I was here, but it was quite pricey. It was about the same price as some of the IPAs actually, and that's one of the things you'll find with craft beer in Japan. It is quite expensive, especially when you consider the fact that Japanese wages are quite a bit lower than other places, to be honest with you, or other developed countries. So yeah, that's one of the battles you face as a craft brewer in Japan. But as of October 2023, when we're filming this review for you, these guys have produced 290 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you, most of these guys most of the beers that these guys produce are IPAs, mainly New England hazies. You'll get West Coast IPAs fairly often as well, and there are a few other styles starting to pop up. I'm pretty sure I did see an Imperial Stout on the Liquor Shop Asahiya Facebook page once upon a time. So yeah, just keep your eye open for that. Lots of interesting stuff coming out from these guys, and it's a brewery that I'll definitely keep an eye on as time goes on. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about West Coast Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So let's go on and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. The can is sweating a little bit because it's still quite warm here in Japan, but you can see the artwork on this one I think is really nice. I did love the name of this one, Harmonic Dreams, and the guy just in the kind of mixing studio there. But there you can see at the top of the can, that is the West Coast Brewing Company symbol there. As I say, I think the can just doesn't like this kind of colour scheme, to be honest with you, when it's that close. Plain silver top on the can there, and you can see this one is a half-litre can, which is kind of interesting when you consider the brewery's founder is American, but there are more and more breweries here in Japan doing these half-litres. So yeah, good to see. This beer, I believe, cost me, I want to say it was 1,400 Japanese yen. If I'm not mistaken, I think, yeah, it was about 1,400 Japanese yen. So these days, that is going to be somewhere in the region of, it's going to be about, maybe about 10 euros, something like that. Somewhere in the region of like, maybe about $11 American, and maybe a bit more than that actually. Yeah, maybe about, £8, £9 sterling, something like that, just for those of you watching in different places. So like I say, craft beer in Japan is quite expensive, especially when you consider that the wage for, doing like a kind of kombini job or work the things is about 1,100-1,200 yen an hour. So, but an hour's wages, this one in Japan. But yeah, 8% West Coast Double IPA, as we said. The hops in this one are Idaho 7 and Citra. There's Cryo in here as well, but we know both of these hops quite well. Both American, both about 14% alpha acid. In a West Coast IPA, Citra's going to give you quite a bit of grapefruit, a good little bit of oily mango as well, sometimes some lychee and lemon limey characteristics. Idaho 7 I haven't had too often in a West Coast IPA, but in a New England it's going to give you that lovely soft kind of apricot-y passion fruit and papaya, you know, those really soft tropical type notes. So I'm curious to see how it goes together in the West Coast IPA. But yeah, Harmonic Dreams, 8% West Coast double IPA. The first West Coast double IPA I've had from West Coast Brewing, actually. We did have a West Coast triple IPA from them when I first tried this brewery, and that was lovely. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. For those of you who don't know, for me the kind of stylistic definition of a West Coast IPA would be one that is brewed with pretty much all barley malt, rather than using a lot of wheat and oats as the New England IPAs do in the malt base. They also tend to be more bitter as well because they use a lot of early edition hopping, and yeah, they tend to be a little bit sweeter in the malt base. There's two ways this style can lean. They can either be more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Russian River Plain of the Elder, or they can be more oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo, and those are two kind of benchmarks of this style, I would say. So yeah, you can see this one is poured pretty much as we might expect from a West Coast IPA. Before the head disappears, it poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head. I wouldn't call that perfect white. You can see the bubbles are kind of medium sized. They're not madly foamy, but the head does get a little bit foamier the further up that you go. And you can see that this one, I would describe it as having a nice kind of light pale golden straw colour. Now this indicates to me that this beer is probably going to be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, rather than being one of the more oily and caramelly type West Coast IPAs. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts you put in, will affect the colour of your beer as well. But when it comes to IPAs of pretty much any description other than fruit IPAs, you know, you don't have to care so much about adjuncts. But yeah, you can see that this beer is pretty clear. There's a wee bit of condensation on the glass, but yeah, you can see it is pretty damn clear. Just a little bit of a kind of natural haze to it. Not much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two bigger bubbles on the bottom of the glass, and you can see a few things going up toward the surface now, which has faded away. The head has faded away to just be a very kind of thin, foamy layer. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. And I think there's not much else to say about the appearance of this beer. So let's look at the aroma. Oh yeah, this smells pretty nice actually. It's certainly not the most pungent of West Coast IPAs. You do have to sugar it up and let it settle a wee bit to take a proper look at the aroma for sure. I'm just laughing as well because you can see my little boy's IKEA toy kitchen behind me here. But yeah, the way that this one goes together is pretty damn nice. It's kind of what you'd expect for the style, of course. But yeah, it just gives you everything you would want. You can't ask for much more than this. But it is. You can smell that this one's going to have a good little bit of bitterness to it. Many breweries these days are not doing too much bitterness in the West Coast IPAs, because a lot of people have come into drinking craft beer on the kind of New England hazies, which are less bitter and more kind of juicy and things like that. So I'm hoping that this one is proper old school, as the triple IPA that we had, the triple West Coast IPA that we had from them before was, and from the aroma I think it will be. But let's just break that aroma down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth then. So the backbone of the beer, this one has, it's got a lovely little bit of, you've got a good little bit of kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. That is absolutely your backbone in this beer. You do get a little bit, it smells like it's German malt that's in here, but I think there might be a little bit of American as well. Just the bready character is a wee bit different. And I found when I was over in the US before, the wheat in particular kind of tasted different and things like that. But yeah, on top of that, you do get a little tiny touch of like woodiness coming out of that malt base as well. You've absolutely got a little bit of like brown bread in there. A little bit of kind of white bread as well, and the bready character smells a little bit sweet. So that makes me wonder if there's a little bit of like Turo, American Turo malt in there. But it does smell as if it's, some of the bready character in there does smell as if it's a little bit kind of lighter and crisper, and that makes me think maybe German crystal. I think there's a bit of a combination going on in here. But on top of the bready character does linger there incidentally. It does take a wee bit of time for the it takes a little bit of time for the sweetness to show its head in this beer. So for me, the sweetness that comes out of this one is quite interesting. You can smell that this beer has a little bit of booziness to it, but it doesn't smell too oily and too caramelly, if that makes sense. So you're getting a little touch of, you're absolutely getting a little bit of that kind of more oily, kind of concentrated, sweet, biscuity type note out of it. There's a bit of, I would call it McVitie's digestive biscuits. Cookies to the American viewers. Don't know the word, I don't know what you would say in Japanese. It would be an achievement to actually do a Japanese language review on the channel at some point, so that could be an interesting thing. But yeah, the flavour profile, the aroma profile on this one is quite nice. As I say, you've got a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit in there. You do have a little bit of that straight up caramel there, that little bit of boozy caramel for sure. And yeah, I think that's all we can really say about the malty side of this beer. It's quite straightforward, but I think it does the trick. So let's have a look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So for me, you do get a good little bit of that green component out of this one. So you can tell this beer has a good little bit of dankness to it. So when it comes to IPAs, there are three types of hoppings that you can do. You can do early edition hopping, which happens within the first hour of the wort boil usually. That gives you pretty much all your bitterness, and it will translate to a deep dank aroma in terms of, it will translate to a kind of deep and dank aroma in terms of the kind of green component, if you like. After that you have late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And it's going to translate to a kind of bright green component in terms of your aroma as well. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's pretty much all flavour in there, and yeah, it's going to give you a very bright green component too. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, whereas West Coast IPAs used all three. And obviously, due to chemistry, you know, more heat, more time, more chemicals being extracted, early addition hopping is what dominates in terms of flavour and aroma, to be honest with you. So with this one, you can absolutely smell that big, kind of deep, dank, piney, resiny character in there. I do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one as well, which is interesting. So yeah, you've got that deep, dank kind of earthiness to the beer. Yeah, bit of earthiness on the back, and I'll show you that deep, dank kind of pine resin is what's coming out a bit more. You do get a little bit of spicy character out of this one too, but you can smell the wetness in the green component, which is usually the that's definitely the result of the cryo. The cryo is going to give you that kind of wetter green component. You've also got a little bit of a kind of zesty grassiness in there, which comes across as being quite wet as well. But yeah, on top of that, you definitely have some really nice, you definitely have a lot of nice fruity character coming out of this one. So yeah, wet, zesty grassiness in there, and then it's all about the fruit. So you do get some very, very nice kind of, you get some really nice sort of grapefruity notes out of this one, but the grapefruit isn't too pungent. There's a good little bit of oily passion fruit in there, juicy oily mango as well, and then you're certainly getting wee bits of, you're absolutely getting little bits of like papaya, apricot, maybe a little bit of pineapple as well out of this one. And you know, these would be coming from both of the hops, to be honest with you. Citra and Idaho 7 are both going to give you this. But then you do start to get just that little bit of gooseberry and lychee. That's going to be the Citra that's giving you that. And I'm getting quite a little bit of limey, zesty character coming out of this one too. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say on the fruity side of things, and therefore everything we need to say about the aroma of this beer. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that. So let's crack on and actually have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. It smells lovely and like a proper old school West Coast double IPA, which to be honest is what I want. So yeah, let's do this. This one is the Harmonic Dreams, an 8% West Coast double IPA with Citra and Idaho 7 from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. Slanja, skål, cheers, kampai. That's pretty damn nice. It's actually very light and very clean in some ways. And I think I'm serving it at the right temperature as well, but a very, first impression of this one is it's a very light, very clean, but definitely has a little bit of that. It has the proper old school dankness that you want, that builds up in the aftertaste, and also the wee bit of sweetness too. I mean, I do really like how this beer pieces together actually, so gets a big thumbs up from me. So, yeah, good stuff. I mean, once again, it's what I would expect. It's the standard I would expect of this brewery. These guys know what they're doing, and every beer I've had from them so far has been pretty damn good. So, cannot complain at all. But there we go. There's the rest of the beer into the glass. This is my beer for the evening. Now that little man has gone to bed. So yeah, it's good. But yeah, very good West Coast double IPA, this one. Definitely as good as the kind of 9, was it 9 or a 10% that we had before, the triple IPA. But yeah, seriously good stuff, this one, and proper old school. And as I was suspecting from the colour of it, it leans toward that more bready, biscuity end of the spectrum. So let's just break the flavour of this one down and describe it a bit more in depth. So, flavour-wise, we'll start with the malt base as we always do. We'll go to that middle third of the palate. The backbone of this beer, has a nice little bit of, you get that fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So that's on the fresh white bready bread crust forms the backbone of this beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of the palate, you do get a little touch of woodiness coming out of this one, and that dryness going into the aftertaste, which is quite nice. So, on top of that kind of bread crusty character, you get a layer of like a slightly sweeter brown bread coming out. So yeah, sweeter brown bread. Then above that, you get a layer of white bread coming out of this one. And the white bread, both of these bready layers have a little bit of sweetness to them, which makes me wonder if it is two-row malt in this. And that, again, that wouldn't surprise me, because this beer is an American owner behind the brewing, but then again, the brewer is there's a French, a Japanese, and an American brewer in there, so who knows who made the recipe for this beer. But yeah, the sweetness of the bread does make me think American two-row, and some of the way the brown sugars come out make me think American two-row, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of crystal or something in here as well. There is an element of Germanness to this beer too, actually. It's mainly the kind of crispness and cleanliness. You do get a little bit of crispness out of this beer into the aftertaste. But yeah, above the kind of white bready layer, that's when you start getting the kind of brown sugary notes out of this beer. So there's a very lightly toasted, like caramelly note on the next layer up. Then you've got a kind of circle where you can feel the nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity characters coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got that kind of, the thing with this beer is as well, you get that nice kind of booziness out of it. So you've got the toasty caramelly layer, the kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity layer, then you get that little circle in the middle of your palate where the flavours are more kind of concentrated. You feel that booziness there. So you've got sweet caramel, then you've got that really boozy big thing in the dead centre of your palate, and that's the kind of epicentre of the beer. Like, I really do like how that pieces together in this one. Yeah, I really do like how everything. I really do like how that pieces together in this one. So I think that kind of says everything we need about the middle third of the palate. The only other thing I would add is that potentially there's a little bit of Pilsner malt in this, because you can just feel a little bit of that kind of crisp dryness at the back of that middle third of your palate, which is quite interesting. So maybe a wee bit of Pilsner malt in there. But yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate then. So the border region, doing middle and back third of the palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build-up in there. A little bit of brown bread in the base, white bread in the top, and then just a wee bit like Pilsner malty crispness on the top. The base, as I often say, what you're going to get on your palate is the sweeter flavour is going to come out further forward, the more dry and bitter flavour is going to come out further back, and the middle third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle palate. The middle of your palate is going to give you kind of the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So you can feel the bread crusty character in the base is definitely a bit more dry and intense. Then you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bready character sitting above that, which is a little bit lighter and a little bit more airy. Then on top of that, you've got the white bready character, which again is a little bit lighter and more airy, and you can feel some of the kind of drier, like Pilsner malty Christmas. What I suspect is Pilsner malty Christmas just creeping over the top of that back third of the palate. Then it's all about the yeast just on top of this one as well. So yeah. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer is quite the yeasty side of this beer is quite an interesting one, because you can feel there's a little bit of that dense, doughy, bready sort of thing in there. So yeah, you've got that sweet, dense, doughy, bready note in there, which has, it's like a kind of brown, doughy, bready sort of note. Then as you go around, kind of wrapped around that, you get this little bit of honeycomb. I always get honeycomb on the back third of the palate for some reason. But yeah, dense, doughy brown bread, maybe a little touch of bread crustiness there, wrapped in honeycomb, and you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it condenses down and it squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, I think that concludes everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So the green component is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest with you. You get a little bit of that earthiness in the back corners of your palate. As you move further forward, there's a little touch of kind of herbal quality in there coming out of this one. So a bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, and then as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate there, you can feel there is that deep, dank kind of pine resinous quality, which is interesting. I think that's going to more come from Citra than it is from the Idaho 7, to be honest with you. And you do get that little bit of floral spice just as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate there, which is interesting too. So yeah. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really very nice as well. So yeah, around the kind of front curve of the palate, you get that little bit of lighter, more kind of grassy note to the beer. It's got a little bit of zestiness to it as well, which is kind of interesting. You do get a little bit of oiliness and wetness out of the green component there, which is of course a sign of cryo, which we know has been used in this one. But yeah, again, that goes together very nicely. Let's go to the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's a good little bit of kind of brown bread in the base, the white bread in the top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, but the bread crust again, the brown bread, the white bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is also very nice. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of things then. At the back of that front third of your palate, there's definitely the grapefruit, which is the Citra. So yeah, the grapefruity side of the Citra is definitely showing itself in this one. Then as you move further forward, you get some of this really nice, you do get a little bit of an oily passion fruit in there, maybe a very slight peach as well. Then further forward from that, there's the big oily mango, and as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you're getting a little bit of the kind of apricot underneath, a little bit of papaya, a wee bit of an oily pineapple on top too. But then as you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue, it becomes more, it does definitely get a little bit more about the, you get a little bit more of the kind of oily, it's quite an oily limey character actually I get with this one. There's a wee bit of a lemony zest to it as well. So yeah, definitely a bit of lemon lime just as you reach the front of that front third of your tongue, and that is when you start to get the blending in with the kind of zesty grassy esters from the green component. But yeah, at that I think we've said everything we really need to about the flavour profile of this beer. I think it goes together really well. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me for sure. Really nice West Coast IPA, and definitely up there with the standards that you'd expect of this brewery. And you know, this beer would hold its own in the US as well, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, good stuff. So on the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review, brain's going a bit slowly, I'm filming this one late at night, so yeah. The mouthfeel of this beer, I would say kind of top end to mid-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth in this one. It has a bit of crispness to it as well. The beer is it feels really quite light and very clean. Actually, you might expect a little bit more oiliness of a West Coast double IPA, but could just be the water in that Mount Fuji region, you know, volcanic water, makes sense. But I do like the cleanliness that this one has, it's really nice. In terms of IBUs, I think this beer is at the top end of the scale, you know, 80, 90 IBUs, which is what you want from this style, but it's really nicely balanced with the malt base. You've got a bit of dryness on the bottom, the smoothness in the middle from the bready characters, which do have their own bit of sweetness, and then you have that sweeter, boozier side of the beer sitting on top from the kind of brown sugary part of it. The fruity side of this one is really nice and really oily. Quite a bit of zesty character to it. You know, you've got the big zestiness and boldness from the grapefruit, but also from the kind of limey side of things. So Citra really doing its job in this one, giving you the big zestiness, and the Idaho 7 sort of just balances out and gives you that little bit of juiciness, I would say. But as I've repeated a few times now, very, very good West Coast double IPA, this one, and certainly in keeping with what I would expect of an American brewed version of the style. Even though this one is Japanese, that's a positive comparison, and yeah, definitely in keeping with the standards I would expect of a West Coast brewing. But yeah, let's leave it at that. This one was the Harmonic Dreams, an 8% West Coast double IPA at 8% ABV from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. That's that. So again, apologies for my slowness with this review, filming a bit later at night, and as always happens, my reviews are a bit slower when I film later. But yeah, really enjoyed trying this one for you. Definitely cool to return to West Coast Brewing after what feels like quite a little bit of time, and we will definitely return to these guys again at some point in the future. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out West Coast Brewing social media, and we will be back with these guys do another review at some point soon. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.